Here's your shot at winning $1,000. Text the national keyword cash right now to 95819. That's CASH to 95819. We'll text you back to confirm your entry. Data and messaging rates may apply. Please don't text and drive. It's $5K a day on WMAL. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7:07, it's O'Connor and Company on Sunday morning. Thanks for tuning in. Coming up at 7:35, Matt Schlapp of CPAC. Talk about the news of the day, the potential government shutdown. Also, Matt Schlapp reminded me over the weekend, in the first Bush administration, he was part of the team that evaluated the nominees for FBI director. So he's known Comey for many, many, many years. We'll get into the James Comey story with him, too. 8:05 General Jack Keane on Prime Minister Netanyahu's meeting today with Trump and maybe an end to the war. That's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Morning, Julie.
Good morning.
There was one voice on this program in mid-2016, even before James Comey made that infamous press conference saying that Hillary Clinton had broken the law and yet no charges will be brought against her. It was, I would say, about 2 months before that stunning announcement when we had a very respected man on this program, the former U.S. Attorney of the District of Columbia, Joe diGenova, say James Comey needs to be fired. That was in 2016. There's been a lot of water under the bridge since then, Joe diGenova. And yes, James Comey did get fired. And on Friday, he was indicted. And I would love to get your initial reactions to what this case looks like, and also, based on what you know of James Comey, why this is an important development.
Well, I think it's important because it's absolutely essential that the people who engaged in a conspiracy to deny Donald Trump his civil rights as a candidate for president and as a president and then as a private citizen are held accountable. This is not retribution. This is the ultimate vindication of constitutional government. We cannot have senior government officials with law enforcement and intelligence authority daring to undermine the Constitution by trying to destroy an incoming, sitting, and former president. The indictment of James Comey is justified. Whether or not it's a good case will be up to juries in Eastern District of Virginia who are highly filled up with government employees who don't like Donald Trump and love people like James Comey. I don't know how the case is going to end in the Eastern District of Virginia. Any cases against Comey and others in the conspiracy should be brought in Florida, where Mar-a-Lago is and where the greatest overt act in history was committed against a former president when they raided Donald Trump's residence. I think it's fascinating, by the way, that Comey is being allowed to surrender instead of being physically arrested as he should be. I deeply regret that they have not arrested him and are allowing him to surrender. It is an insult to all the other people who were arrested.
Yeah, is there any explanation for that? He has until the 9th, I guess, when he'll be arraigned to voluntarily surrender. Roger Stone put out a picture of him barefoot being marched out after 29 FBI agents, armed agents, raided his home at 6 in the morning. Oh, by the way, while tipping off CNN so that their cameras could be there. For everybody who says that, two wrongs don't make a right, I mean, it seems to me that Comey's being treated with kid gloves here. He's not in any way being treated as shabbily as people in the Trump administration were.
You're absolutely right, Larry, and I think it's a shame. By the way, it isn't because I want to hurt or injure Mr. Comey. It's important to have equality of treatment. If you can arrest people like Peter Navarro at the airport for a misdemeanor, put him in chains in the airport, drag him to FBI station, which is 1 block from his house where he lives in his condo in D.C., and not allow him to surrender. This was retributive justice. When all these people talk about this being retribution, they forget about the way the search warrant process and the arrest process was used by the Biden administration. I don't wish James Comey ill physically. I wish him ill legally. And part of that process of accountability should have been that he is arrested.
Joe, the grand jury failed to indict him on one of the charges, that is lying to Congress. What do you make of that? And does that does that give you a peek into what's going to happen, or does it indicate anything that we should worry about?
Well, it would have been my preference for this case not to be brought in the Eastern District of Virginia at all. I think the lying under oath, allegedly, or making false statements is an interesting case. And if it were the only case against James Comey, I would say, fine, proceed. I believe that James Comey is at the center of a conspiracy to deny Donald Trump his civil rights. I would have waited on this, or I would have returned a sealed indictment and let it sit there because of the statute of limitations until other cases were resolved. I think, it's just, to me, what I'm concerned about is how this will affect other cases. Will it cause double jeopardy? Suppose he's involved in a major conspiracy, gets indicted in Florida. Suppose he's acquitted in the Eastern District of Virginia. He pleads double jeopardy in Florida. I don't know what the answer to that will be, but I can tell you this. The case in Florida, if it's brought by the U.S. attorney down there, is a massive, massive conspiracy involving loads of former and current government officials. And I hate to see this case in the Eastern District of Virginia go away. I know the president was very concerned about having accountability, and I say it's very unfortunate that everybody involved in these decisions took so long to do it.
Joe, heard, and I appreciate that, and I think that's important. There is some suggestion. I know that Catherine Herridge, independent investigative reporter now, because asking questions was way too dangerous for CBS News. She has been suggesting, based on her sources, that there are many more charges against Comey to come, and this one was sort of a placeholder. Can you explain what that might mean and what that might look like? And do you agree that that might be the case here?
I don't know what she means by placeholder. I can't figure that out. I mean, it doesn't do any good. He's got an appearance on October 9th, and they're going to schedule a trial unless the government moves to dismiss the indictment for some reason or ask for a stay or a continuance. But Mr. Comey's entitled to a speedy trial. He has the right to demand a speedy trial. So I'm not quite sure what a placeholder is, because anybody who thinks you're going to bring a big conspiracy case in another jurisdiction doesn't know what it's like to put together a comprehensive conspiracy case, which, the way I look at all the evidence starting in 2016 is a massive case. Theoretically, could involve two former presidents as either indicted or unindicted co-conspirators. So if this is a placeholder, I think it's pretty stupid.
Okay. And also, it's amazing the analysis and all of the discussion over the weekend by most of the legacy corporate media outlets really just wanted to talk about President Trump and his involvement in public statements with regard to whether this indictment should come forward or not, rather than actually the basis of the case itself. We're going to stay with Joe. I want him to sort of reflect on this and the fact that he's a former U.S. attorney. Apparently, presidents aren't allowed to say anything about whether the U.S. attorneys and the Justice Department should investigate certain crimes or certain people for crimes. I never knew that, but maybe Joe can enlighten us on the history there and the precedent. First, though, it's 7:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Brought to you by the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. We guide you home. NATCA.org. Your next $1,000 could be one text away. It's 5K a day on WMAL.
Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes and Jake Tapper tell me that there's supposed to be a firewall between the president and his attorney general. I did some cursory research on this, Joe diGenova. George Washington told his attorney general who should and should not be prosecuted connected to the Whiskey Rebellion. John Adams, the second president, told his attorney general how to apply the Alien and Sedition Act. And by the way, Thomas Jefferson ran on a platform against the Alien and Sedition Act and said, if you elect me, I will tell the attorney general to not prosecute that law, which is exactly what he did. So that's the first three presidents, Joe. You tell me. It seems to me that presidents always instruct their attorney general on how to prosecute federal law.
Well, of course they did up until after Watergate. And then, of course, everybody got paroxysms of fear about any president talking to the Justice Department. And so they put up these phony walls that there shouldn't be communication between the Justice Department and the president, as if there's some sort of sanctity in that relationship that a president can't touch. Let us be perfectly clear. Under Article 2, the President of the United States is the executive branch. The Attorney General is not the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. The President of the United States is the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. For purposes of process and executing policy, the Attorney General is the agent of the President of the United States. Now, the President has a right to say anything he wants about these cases, particularly because he is a victim of these cases. He is the person against whom all of these crimes were committed. Now, if I were sitting by him, I'd say, Mr. President, let me handle this. You go about the business of running the world, stopping wars, feeding the hungry, and taking care of, and I'll take care of this. But it's pretty obvious that the president has had enough after more than 10 years of being manipulated, destroyed, vilified, indicted, labeled a felon. So forgive me, Jake Tapper, of all the most obnoxious people in the world making comments about the Constitution. The president is perfectly constitutionally proper in his place to comment on these cases. I wish he wouldn't say a lot of things, but you know what? If I were in his shoe, it'd be pretty tough to shut up.
Yeah. So just to tie this up, and I've got one other question on another topic for you, but it sounds to me like, and Stephen Miller, by the way, I think it was on Hannity Friday night, sort of laid out the grand conspiracy charges that you're alluding to here, involving two former presidents, involving John Brennan, involving James Clapper and James Comey. It sounds to me like you would have preferred for the investigation and those charges to come to fruition with a concerted effort by either a U.S. attorney or maybe a special investigator to sort of really bring home that story, because we've learned enough through all of these document releases now about exactly what was going on. And yes, lies to Congress and lies to investigators, including Mr. Durham, could be enveloped into those charges. But it sounds to me like you would have preferred that than these charges that we saw in this first indictment. Am I reading you right?
You are reading me absolutely correct. Let me be very clear. The evidence on the public record right now, particularly based on the Susan Rice memo of 2017, where she basically establishes the conspiracy by saying that in the Situation Room in the White House, the sitting president of the United States discussed an investigation into an incoming president of the United States based on the false premise of the Hillary Clinton scheme to blame the Russians for her defeat. If anybody thinks there is not enough evidence to go forward with a legitimate investigation of Barack Obama, Joe Biden, James Comey, James Brennan, Brennan, Clapper, and the rest of them, they're out of their minds. Why did Susan Rice write that memo, for the record, on Inauguration Day 2017? Because when they realized what they had done, they realized they had committed a crime.
Smoking gun stuff there, and I agree with you. And I think it's also important to reiterate, again, I'm picking this up from you, tell me if I'm wrong, that that public record enforces and justifies charges of a grand conspiracy, including all of those names we just said. But because it's tied to the Mar-a-Lago raid, that federal grand jury should be impaneled and those charges should be brought down in Florida, right?
That is absolutely correct.
All right. Just wanted to make sure I was clear on all of those things. One other question for you. It appears that the Solicitor General is imploring the Supreme Court to fast-track the birthright citizenship question. And, of course, the first Monday in October is right around the corner here as the docket starts to fill. What do you expect from that case and the merits of that case, and do you think the Supreme Court will take it up?
I think the president has raised a perfectly legitimate issue with his executive order. I believe he is correct in his interpretation of the Constitution. The existing case law never anticipated massive illegal immigration with those illegal immigrants having babies, and those babies become automatically U.S. citizens. The founders never thought about that. The justices who wrote the other opinions on this never thought about that. The Supreme Court needs to fix this. Will they do it? I haven't the slightest idea. I have no idea where the Roberts Court is going.
Joe diGenova, you are in rare form today, and you sound all. I was going to say full of what's the term, piss and vinegar, but you actually sound like you're full of pasta and sauce. How are you feeling today, sir? You good?
I am indeed.
Right, good. Maybe a little Chianti as well. Thank you, Joe. Always good to
indeed.
talk with you. It is 7:23.
Coming up, we're going to talk to Matt Schlapp with CPAC. He's going to tell us his thoughts on Comey and the looming shutdown. Keep it here, 7:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
What a time to be alive here. It's the golden era of talk radio here in your nation's capital. It's O'Connor and Company at 7:36 this Monday, the 29th day of September, heading up against the end of the fiscal year. That means theoretically there could be a government shutdown. Technically, it's the Schumer shutdown. We'll give you those details momentarily with Matt Schlapp. Also at 8:05, General Jack Keane reflecting on today's meeting between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump and whether we actually have an end to the war in Gaza on the horizon. We'll get to all of that coming up in a moment. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock back from vacation. Welcome back, Julie.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Let's get to Matthew Schlapp. He, of course, the chairman of CPAC and the American Conservative Union and a veteran of the Bush administration. He joins us now. Thanks, Matt. Good morning.
Larry, great to be with you.
It is first in your role as a veteran of the Bush administration that I would like to pick your brain or perhaps implicate you, because you reminded me over the weekend with a text message that you were part of the team that sort of performed part of the vetting process of James Comey. So I guess I should ask you, what did you know then? When did you know it? And why did you let this happen?
Well, I'll say one thing. I lost that fight. There are internal fights that you lose. There were two I lost. I tried to prevent Mike Brown from being head of FEMA. I think history shows that was a good pushback.
Oh, Brownie. Yeah, hell of a job, Browning. Yeah.
And James Comey as well. I lost that fight as well. Look, I think most presidents want their cabinet secretaries to be able to pick their teams, and it's, in the end, very hard for White House staff to always win on these things. But the one thing we learned about James Comey is that I think he was a registered Republican at some point, but when we did the political check, all the Republicans said they thought he was a Democrat, and when you called Democrats, they thought he was a Democrat. So, and then when I met with him, he told me he was a huge Republican, a big supporter of President Bush. So what kind of, and then I talked to senior people who worked for him, and what you really realized about James Comey is it was all about him, all about his ego, all about his career, and getting the brass ring, getting that next big job. He would do anything to get that next big job. And as you know, you could see as FBI director, he acted much more like a politician than an investigator.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Matt, he's been sort of unhinged lately. The walks on the beach, the sort of vague threats to the president, the love of Taylor Swift. Oh, my gosh. Just embarrassing. I think several people think that he's going for an insanity defense here with some of the shenanigans that we've seen lately. But did you obviously were a good judge of character when it comes to Comey. Did you detect any sort of mental issues? I'm actually not kidding. I think he's a little unhinged. Did that worry you when you were interviewing him?
I do think he's incredibly tall, and it is kind of weird that he talked about being a basketball player and seemed to affirm that he was a basketball player when actually he never played any high school or college basketball. So weird. That is a little bit weird. But I actually think, Julie, I think you've got it wrong on this, and that's not usual for you. But I actually think what he's doing is perfectly consistent with what he's always done. He becomes the man. He wears the clothes he needs to wear to get to the next step. He's gone to the top in the legal profession, all the way to the top, right? Head of the FBI. I think he was the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. Like, he got all the top jobs. Now, what's the next step in his career? I understand they're a very wealthy family. They've got all that they need. Now it's like, how does he get to the next status? And that's to be accepted by the glitterati and the zeitgeist and the Hollywood crowd and the New York crowd. Like, he's their darling. And so you will see him now. He's now applying for that job, and he's performing that task beautifully.
Our guest is Matt Schlapp, American Conservative Union and CPAC, and I do want to turn your focus to what will be the dominant story this week. Should the Democrats continue to insist on government-funded health care for illegal aliens and other little ridiculous unconstitutional demands to keep the government funded? You've had to live through some of these media stories about a government shutdown, which, of course, is not a government shutdown. It seems as though the narrative has changed, though, this time. It looks like Republicans know how to play this game, and they're on the right side of it. Or am I being too hopeful?
No, I think you're right, Larry. I don't think it's that we've learned how to play it any better. I think Republicans are still scared to death of shutdowns ever since the shutdown in the Newt Gingrich days. And I think they've overcorrected. They've been so scared of a shutdown that they signed off on all kinds of spending at USAID and everything else because they were so scared to actually do oversight. And I think they've come to realize that the potential political charge that, oh my God, you put federal governments on a holiday that they get completely paid for, they get all their salary for it, and 97 or 87% of the government is on autopilot, whereas the shutdown of Newt Gingrich, it was the opposite. It was like 80% of the government wasn't on autopilot, so everything really did shut down. Now it doesn't work that way anymore. And besides, who cares? I mean, who's the federal government employee party? It's now very clear. We don't have very many Republican seats in Maryland and Virginia, certainly nothing even near D.C. So, like, they own this 100%. If they want to fight to give health care to illegal aliens, have at it. I think we win that fight. I'm glad President Trump and Mike Johnson and others are making it.
Well, and Russ Vought, OMB director, who basically said, listen, do that. You're giving me a green light and a permission slip to start firing people. That said, there is a pretty contested governor's race in Virginia going on right now. That will be in the foreground as this battle looms. And could that end up being a benefit for Abigail Spanberger? Because it looks as though Winsome Sears has narrowed the gap. Yeah,
I fear that could be the case. As I said, the Democratic Party is the government party, and unfortunately, Maryland and Virginia, although Youngkin and Hogan and others have won recently, they're by and large states that benefit from all the business and the dirty dealings that go on in Washington D.C. So it becomes hard for Republicans to win in those states under that scenario until common sense people realize crime is not good. Normalizing crime is terrible, including all the illegal aliens who are here and the costs associated. So, you have to hit bottom. It's kind of like New York City. If they elect this communist mayor, they're going to have, I thought they hit the bottom, Larry and Julie, but I don't think even know they hit it yet. I think it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
There's definitely more bottom to be had. Matt Schlapp, thank you for doing that. By the way, you mentioned James Comey and the Taylor Swift obsession. Matt has several teenage girls right now as daughters. 3 out of your 5 girls are teenage girls right now. James Comey is more of a teenage girl than Matt Schlapp's teenage girls are.
Matt Schlapp understands Comey.
Yes.
I think that they seem to have a much more balanced view of life than our former FBI director. That's for sure.
They're way more mature
and that's
and
saying
realistic
a lot.
and honest. Thank you, Matt. Give our best to the family.
Bye, guys.
7:44.
WMAL's Vince Colonnese, weekdays at noon on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Well, update from New York City, as you just heard Matt Schlapp allude to the race for mayor there, where the communist Zoran Mamdani, he's a anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, pro-Hamas terrorist, avowed communist who wants to put state control of the economy and functions, private functions, in the control of the city government there in New York City, which, by the way, New Yorkers are going to be really surprised when they learn that the mayor doesn't have the kind of power that Mamdani is pretending that he has. That said, he has been leading in the polls ever since he won the Democrat primary there. It's been a four-way race between Mamdani, the incredibly unpopular Andrew Cuomo, who was drummed out of office as governor of New York in shame and scandal, and also engineered the disastrous and deadly pandemic response. So those are your two frontrunners. Then you had incredibly unpopular Eric Adams running as the incumbent mayor, and then you have Curtis Sliwa, the Republican nominee. Well, over the weekend, Adams has officially now dropped out of the race. This is just 4 weeks before Election Day. He was losing in the polls. He was losing in fundraising. There's some thought that whoever was still supporting him, which I believe was under 10% of the electorate, could go Andrew Cuomo's way, but I'm not so sure about that. They could very well go Mamdani's way. And now there's pressure on Curtis Sliwa to drop out, along with the 15 cats that he's living with in his 300-square-foot apartment. Trump was on Fox and Friends the other day, asked about this. He goes, I'm a Republican, but Curtis, he's not exactly prime time. He wants cats in Gracie Mansion. We don't need thousands of cats in Gracie Mansion. It's my worst Trump impression ever, but I love that that's what everyone hones in on. Well, the Trump... The Trump cat feud has been going on back to the 80s, by the way.
I sneezed earlier, and so I muted my mic, and so I've been hysterically laughing this whole time by myself. The cats are pretty amazing. I'm so depressed about this, but you managed to make me laugh about Mamdani.
Yeah, no, it is depressing. And everybody who suggests, well, we need everyone to drop out, so it's a one-on-one against Mamdani and Cuomo. Let me just remind everybody, and let me just say, I loathe both of these individuals for various reasons, politically and personally. But everybody who's analyzing this just on policy and just on politics, and Mamdani, is got all these crazy Marxist ideas, and New York's not that left, it's not that crazy, which I agree, it's bad, but it's not that bad. And so if Cuomo, it's just a one-on-one, then Cuomo will win. Well, you're forgetting one very important factor here. People hate Andrew Cuomo.
Him.
They hate him.
And when
they think he's responsible, and I think they're correct, in the deaths of thousands of nursing home patients.
Also, what the sex pest issue, I mean, like, people don't forget this stuff. And the other thing is when you listen to Mamdani's supporters, okay, and let me tell you, not the brightest folks, okay, they say one consistent thing. Well, let's give it a shot. Let's give it a try, right? They literally are willing to endure this experiment, this horrifying communist Marxist experiment, instead of Cuomo. So
I used to live in New York, and I'll say it again. I say it all the time. I've lived in Los Angeles. I've lived in New York, and I've lived there when Republicans have won the mayor's race. And people say, when will they vote for mayor again? And the only answer is when it gets that bad. When it gets so bad that they will. Now Slee was not the solution. New Yorkers had Rudy Giuliani. In L.A., Angelenos had Dick Reardon. And they both won re-election. They were very popular mayors. They were great, and they got things done. Republicans need to field somebody like that in New York and in Los Angeles to have a chance. But let me say, if I were there right now, if I were still living in New York, and my choice was Andrew Cuomo or Zoran Mamdani, because realistically that is the only choice. There's a third option, and it's not Sliwa. The third option is to move. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. That's
what's going to happen. People are just going to leave that city, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. It's not. But for those of you who think it's a two-man race, Cuomo wins, don't be so sure about that. New Yorkers hate Andrew Cuomo. They just do.
Yes. Yeah.
They hate him so much that they'll vote for a communist.
Yeah, and more importantly, and they know what they'll have to endure, and they're willing to do it.
That's right. It's 7:53.